Hello, my name is Jeremy Barnes, and today I'm going to be doing a review for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is a mini-series on Disney Plus, covering the Falcon and Bucky's journey after the events of Avengers Endgame. And it's like basically a 5-hour movie, but it's split up into 6 parts, so it's considered a TV show. I'm wearing this shirt specifically because it's the only shirt I have with Falcon in it. Too bad Bucky's not in there too, but what are you gonna do? First, I'll give you my overall score out of 10 for the series, which I think I would give an 8 out of 10. Mostly because I think overall the show was really good, but the plot of the show wasn't really that strong in my opinion because it focused on a bunch of super soldiers called the Flag Smashers, and none of them ever turned out to be really anything interesting. So, of anything in the show, I think they were definitely the worst part, and they dragged down the whole thing quite a bit, in my opinion. And then now I'm going to go into different parts on why my score is that, and my thoughts about each element of the show. Spoilers for the show. So I'm going to start first with characters, and I'm going to start with the lead of the show, which is definitely Sam Wilson, portrayed by Anthony Mackie, and he is the Falcon. So I'll say for Sam, he was great throughout the show, but in a couple episodes he was given a minimal role, which was weird since, like I said, he is the lead, I would say. So that was kind of negatives in those episodes that he didn't have a primary part in. But overall, he did make a really good impact, and I think Marvel definitely leveled up his character compared to his portrayal in the movies, and he really is the star of the show, and you could tell, and Anthony Mackie does deliver a good performance with that. So he was really good, and specifically the episode where I feel like Sam was kind of sidelined was episode 3, and in that episode he not only doesn't really have a strong presence, but also he seems to be made like inadequate a little bit because when they go to Madripoor in that episode, his phone goes off, and you would think that somebody who's done like military service and secret missions, which I'm assuming he has, that he would know to turn off his phone, but in this episode he doesn't, and it gets them all caught, which gets them into trouble. But everybody else seems to know what they're doing. Like Bucky knows what he's doing. He doesn't make any mistakes. Zemo is their like tour guide, so he of course knows what they're doing, and he's actually taking the lead in that episode. But yeah, but Sam makes that one mistake, and he even is forced to take a drink of the person he's pretending to be, which is somebody known as the Black Tiger, and it's like some organ of a snake inside of the drink. So even on that part, he was like basically breaking his cover. So yeah, I don't know about that. It's kind of a small thing, but it's just something that I noticed. And I would also say that episode 1, while Sam was a big part of the focus of that episode, I don't think his stuff on the drama side of things was really strong for him. And it's mainly because the whole story in terms of Sam and his family, which is like a minor aspect of the whole show, but it starts out in the first episode and it gets concluded in the last two, is this whole thing with his family boat. Like his parents had a shrimp company, um, and currently, because both of his parents are dead, his sister is running it. And over the last 5 years, when Sam was blipped away by Thanos' snap, his sister was there by himself running the business. So currently she's struggling, and Sam, now that he's back, he wants to help out. And they go to a bank to try to get a loan for the boat, which is not in a good shape right now. But they're not given the loan, possibly due to racism. like just racial injustices. But that part of the story, while it is definitely real for real life, I didn't believe Sam would actually not have the money because from what I normally would see or expect, the military usually pays well, and it seems like he was working for the military currently. And I think it's been 6 months since Endgame, so he should have been working with them for a while now. So I would have thought he had money saved, but I don't know, maybe not. And he said that Tony Stark never paid him for his service as an Avenger, which, like, to me, I don't know, that doesn't sound like it would be accurate. So I don't know, I just didn't believe it. So the whole thing was like, if anything was forced, the like race aspects of the show, I would say that was like literally the only thing that I didn't like about it. Everything else was really strong throughout the whole series. Just because I didn't believe it. Like it's real in real life, like I said, but I didn't think Sam would actually be in that position. And it could be maybe due to his time after Civil War, because in Civil War, obviously, he took Captain America's side, which went against the government. So he was on the run for 2 years up until Infinity War. So maybe he used all of his money up in that time, and he hasn't gained enough money to be in a good state financially today during the show Falcon and Winter Soldier. So maybe that's why. But they never actually say that. So the show itself, I don't think portrayed that. So that's why I would give that part a bit of a negative. The episodes where Falcon or Sam was really strong was definitely, I think, in the latter half of the season, episodes 4 through 6. And I would say the best aspects of Sam's character was Counselor Sam, because he reminds us that in The Winter Soldier, he was a counselor for the VA. And we see some of that stuff come out here, which we hadn't seen since Winter Soldier, I think. And even in that movie, it was like a small scene. And in my opinion, what he said in that scene wasn't even really that good. But Sam definitely displays a lot of empathy for others in this show. And the first time it happens is in episode 4 when he talks to Karli, the leader of the Flag Smashers group, which are the main adversaries of the show. He tries to reason with her and like convince her that she's doing something that has a good goal, but she's going about it the wrong way because she's killing people, and she doesn't show any remorse for doing that. And Sam tells her this, and it seems like he is getting to her in some way, but it's ruined then by John Walker, who was the new government issued Captain America. But I'll go into that later. Um, Another moment where Sam shows his counseling skills in a really strong scene is when he talks to Bucky in episode 5, and it's when they're on Sam's property, practicing, like, just kind of tossing the shield around as if they're playing catch or something. And they're having a conversation too about Steve and their whole journey so far, which is related to the shield and who is supposed to be or going to be Captain America. And this is after they took the shield from John Walker, who was never fit to wield it. And Sam tells Bucky, like, in order for him to gain closure and like move on from the Winter Soldier days, is not to make himself feel better by apologizing to people that he's wronged, but making them feel better, um, and giving them closure. And we see that in episode 1, Bucky had this guy whose son he killed as the Winter Soldier, and he has been having a relationship with him, like hanging out with him pretty much. I think mostly at a bar, just getting drinks and stuff. But he has yet to have been brave enough to tell him the truth that he killed him. So Sam tells Bucky that some people on his list of names, on people he's wronged or things that he's done bad, um, either by putting bad guys in positions of power that some of them may need closure. And obviously, Yori, which is the old man who lost his son, is one of those people. Um, and Bucky, I think, from that conversation, finally knows what he has to do. The last part that I think had a really strong scene from Sam was in the last episode after he becomes Captain America, and it's when the news are all right there after pretty much they've stopped the bad guys. He tells the politicians, the GRC, that what they're doing isn't really right either, because their plan is basically to kick out people who moved into countries that they were originally not allowed into during the blip. So in the 5 years between Infinity War and Endgame, because so many people got blipped away, they needed people to come in to help out, like to keep everything together. So they let these people in, but now that everybody else that went away came back, they're gonna kick out the people that came during those 5 years. So now they're gonna be homeless after having a home for 5 years. So that's pretty wrong, and that's kind of why Karli and the Flag Smashers are doing what they're doing, because they see that that's wrong and they don't think these people should be in power. So their idea of fixing it is just to get rid of them by killing them, or at least by like using them as hostages to negotiate better terms. But obviously that doesn't look good either. So Sam tells them that what they're doing is wrong and they need to change and they need to gain empathy for people instead of just like dividing people by saying, "Oh, these guys are bad. We're the good guys. We're trying to do good things, and in order to do that, we got to get rid of these people." And I think Sam made a really good point, and that scene was a really strong scene, especially when we saw everybody else that knows Sam or that Sam knows, their reactions to that speech. So that was a really great scene. But now I'm gonna go into Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier slash White Wolf. And I'd say he also was great throughout the show. The only thing I didn't like about Bucky's story was probably his resolution in episode 6, because that's the episode where he goes to Mr. Nakajima, the father of the son who he murdered as the Winter Soldier. And I was expecting that scene to be really good, but I feel like they didn't give it the time that it needed to be a great scene. Like he told him what happened, but it was like really quick. Like it was just like one sentence pretty much, and that was it. They did have a little mini scene or clip after that where Bucky goes to check on him at the bar that they would normally hang out together at. So that was kind of nice, but he just went there to check to see if he was okay, and it seemed like he was for the most part. But that was it. Like they didn't actually have a conversation. Like we didn't hear Mr. Nakajima say anything back, which I think would have been good to hear. But other than that, I think Bucky did have a great story, and even though he's technically the second lead of the show, I think he's definitely still a secondary character, and Sam was the primary character. But I would say Bucky's strongest episodes were probably episode 1, 2, and 4. Mostly because in those scenes he has some more dramatic and emotional scenes, and I feel like all of those scenes were really strong. In episode 1, it was first in the therapy scene with Bucky's therapist. I think her name was Dr. Rayner, and in that scene she asks him about his nightmares, which we see him have one. And the nightmare that he had was when he killed Yori's son as the Winter Soldier. And I think we see that's how we start off Bucky's story in the show. We see that clip, and he lies to the doctor. He says he didn't have any nightmares, but he told her that he's been trying to make amends for his wrongdoings as the Winter Soldier, and we see one example of that where he gets one of the politicians that he's put in power as the Winter Soldier, who is corrupt, um, and he gets her caught by the authorities. So that was one thing that he did. But he says that his life has been like pretty tough, and like he's still getting used to living in the modern world because he technically hasn't really had that time, because since World War II he hasn't really been able to live. He's just been used as a weapon by Hydra, coming in and out and going from battle to battle. And he says the only time recently that he's had any sort of like calm was in Wakanda. And I feel like you definitely get a sense that Bucky did have a good amount of time there, because originally they froze him at the end of Civil War to try to figure out how to get rid of the Hydra brainwashing. So I don't know when they awakened him and when they actually finished and got it out of him. But after they did, I feel like he had a bit of a time, like I don't know, maybe only 6 months. It might have been right before Infinity War, where he actually got to live there peacefully and try to contribute to their society for their help in getting rid of his brainwashing. And you could tell he definitely like knows a lot about Wakanda and its culture from his time there. The other scene that was emotional was when he was with Yori, Mr. Nakajima, the father of the son that he killed. And Mr. Nakajima was mentioning what happened to his son, because he was reminded of him because there was this food dish that he liked at the bar. Um, and like Bucky, he wants to tell him, like he goes back to his house later on and he wants to tell him, but he doesn't find the strength to do it yet. And that stuff like was really powerful, I think. And then another scene in episode 2 with Bucky is another therapy scene, but this time it was with Sam, where Dr. Rayner wanted them to talk to each other about what they were feeling about each other because they weren't really getting along. And Sam doesn't know why Bucky's making such a big deal about why Sam gave away the shield to the museum, which then ended up getting into the hands of John Walker, who was made the new Captain America. Um, and Bucky was really pissed about that because he felt hurt that Sam would do that, because he felt like Sam didn't value Steve, and that's why he gave it away. Um, but it was more complicated than that. And Sam tells him,
maybe this is something you or Steve will never understand. But can you accept that I did what I thought was right?
and he doesn't go into any more specific details than that, but I think Anthony Mackie's performance in that scene, you could tell that I think race did play a big factor into why he wasn't comfortable, like basically holding the mantle of Captain America, and that's why he gave it away, because he feels like Steve or Captain America, which the shield is a symbol of, it's a public thing, so he thought it belongs in the public, which is why he gave it to the museum. But he didn't think that the government would like take the shield, which I don't know, maybe he should have thought. Like I feel like Sam should have just kept the shield. He didn't have to be Captain America. He should have just kept it himself though, in his house. But Bucky then replies to Sam by saying,
Steve believed in you. He trusted you. He gave you that shield and you threw it away like it was nothing. So maybe he was wrong about you. And if he was wrong about you, then he was wrong about me.
and what I think he means is that Steve was wrong to put his faith in Bucky, specifically in Civil War, when everybody was hunting him down. Steve put everything on the line to save Bucky,
I don't know if I'm worth all this, Steve.
which was the right thing to do because Bucky was innocent in that movie, because he was framed by Zemo in the murder of King T'Chaka and a bunch of others at the UN. So Bucky was questioning his own worth after that. And when he said that line, I think it really hit me, and I think I teared up a little bit. But it wasn't just because of that line; it was everything that came before it in episode 2 as well. Because right before that, Bucky took Sam to meet Isaiah Bradley, who was a soldier during the Korean War, and he actually also got the super soldier serum at that time. And his story is pretty tragic. Isaiah Bradley was one of many black soldiers at that time who was being experimented on and given the super soldier serum. But he says that they didn't know what it was. That the people who gave it to them told them that it was a tetanus shot. But the super soldier being something that is really difficult to replicate caused a lot of problems with the other soldiers, and a lot of people were getting sick from it. But there were some survivors, but they were being sent out on missions just like Captain America during World War II. But some of them got captured by the enemies, and the government decided instead of trying to rescue them, they were just going to blow up the base that they were at, where they were captured and held at, to get rid of the evidence of what they had done by creating the super soldier serum. But obviously Isaiah, who was not captured, was not going to let that happen, so he went against orders to not do anything, and he went to save his comrades, and he did save them successfully, but they ended up dying anyway because of the super soldier serum, and I think he was the only survivor after. But because of him not following orders, he was put in jail and continued being tested on to see why the super soldier serum worked in him. And they arrested him because he knew what they had done, which was illegal. Like, it was not done legally, so they couldn't let it get out. So that's why they imprisoned him. Um, so yeah, that story is really tragic, and it's actually mirroring a real life event where the military or the government also gave Tuskegee Airmen syphilis without telling them what it was in order to see its effects on people. And obviously, I think these men probably died from it because they didn't treat them for it. They just used them to see what happens to people if they get it. And and yeah, I think they all died in real life, and that was something that happened. And the comic book version of Isaiah Bradley's story was based on this real life event, and the adaptation, it was also based on it. So that stuff was really messed up. But Isaiah Bradley made it out of that imprisonment by a nurse helping him, and she faked his death, and that was the only way he was able to escape. And he fortunately was able to keep living, like he didn't get sick like the others. But then Sam meets him, and he finds out about his story, which was never made public by the government. Another scene with Bucky that was really good and a really emotional scene was in the beginning of episode 4, after Io was teased as a cliffhanger in the previous episode. Io is one of the members of the Dora Milaje from Wakanda. And we see in the beginning of episode 4 that Io was one of the main ones that helped Bucky in terms of getting rid of the Hydra brainwashing, because Shuri's the one that did all the scientific work, but Io was there to make sure it didn't work anymore by saying the words to see if he would become the Winter Soldier. And when he didn't, he knew finally that he was free of all that terrible stuff that he had done. Um, and Io tells him that, and he starts crying because he's happy that he's finally rid of it. Um, and before she finished saying all the words that would activate the Winter Soldier, he didn't believe it would be true. And once he saw that it was, like, it was like a relief, a weight off of his shoulders. And now he could finally go back into the world and live without having to worry about becoming the Winter Soldier. And that scene was really emotional. It was quite a way to start off the next episode 4, which is actually probably my favorite episode of the whole series. But yeah, I think Bucky's story was really good. And the next character I'm going to talk about is John Walker, who, like I said, is the new Captain America. But throughout the show, I've just been calling him the U.S. agent, which is what he is in the comics. And I would say John Walker is great overall as a character, but like as a person, within the world of the show, he's super hateable, and I don't like him. Uh, but the way he's written, his character is really good, and I think it's really fleshed out with a lot of depth. And I would say just like Bucky, John Walker's resolution in episode 6 wasn't really that good in my opinion. And for him, for John Walker, I would say mostly just because it didn't feel earned. Because in the whole series, he's just kind of this arrogant douchebag who thinks he's the shit just because the government picked him to be Captain America. Um, but he makes a huge mistake at the end of episode 4 by murdering one of the flag smashers out of anger for the leader Karli killing his best friend Lamar, and who was also his partner, and also had like a superhero alias called Battlestar. But he didn't find Karli; he found this other flag smasher named Nico, and he just murdered him because he was angry. And he did this when Nico was unarmed and surrendering, and he still killed him, which is why it was not a good thing. Like if it was in the heat of battle, or like, you know, if he was threatening somebody else, or if he was still fighting back and trying to kill John, and then John killed him, like it would be a different story. But he was surrendering unarmed at that point, and John had taken the super soldier serum before this whole encounter in this episode. So they were already evenly matched, and John just murdered him with the shield, and he bloodied the shield, which was desecration of it. But after episode 4, after he does that, he's demoted by the government, and he's no longer Captain America. But he's like pissed about their decision to do that, and he decides to make his own shield, and he still has the costume, so he's gonna go out, and he does go out in episode 6 to keep fighting the flag smashers. But Karli throws a group of hostages, the GRC hostages, are all in a truck, and she throws the truck, and it's about to fall over into a huge construction site from a high place. And instead of going after Karli to finally kill her, which I think he did want to do, he makes the decision there that instead of doing that, he's gonna save these people. And I don't know, to me, I don't think he would have done that based off of his previous actions, because even in episode 5, after he killed Nico, Sam and Bucky went to go get the shield back from him, because they're like, all right, he's had it enough, and he's broken like as a person, and now he's used the shield as a murder weapon, so now he really can't have it. But he doesn't want to give it up, so they have to fight him to get it. And in that fight, he's almost gonna kill Sam too, the same way that he killed Nico, which, like, that shit is stupid, because there is no reason for him to kill Sam, but he really was gonna do it. Like, he looked crazy and scary in that moment. But luckily Bucky saves Sam, and they do get the shield away. So if he was gonna kill Sam, who didn't do anything to him, no reason to be killed, then I don't think he would have let Karli get away, who is the one responsible for Lamar's death. Um, but it could be that the reason why he did save the people in the van or the truck is because one of the people in there was the senator who made him Captain America, and I had a sense that they knew each other personally. Um, like maybe he was his main guy who gave him a lot of opportunities within the military, so he was saving him for his sake, even though he is also the one that demoted him from the title of Captain America. But the episode itself didn't make that clear, so I don't think the piece of art itself does a good job at conveying that. But I would say in that moment, I think John is reminded of Lamar, And I feel like Lamar is the one that actually pushed John to do the right thing in that moment, because before he goes to save the people, he puts his helmet down and he puts his hand over his helmet, which is something that he did in episode 5 after he killed Nico, and he's remembering Lamar, because this is right after Lamar has died as well, and he's getting flashbacks and Lamar telling him like, you always make the right cause in the heat of battle, which he didn't in episode 4. Um, because like I said earlier, he also stormed into the room where Sam and Karli were having a conversation when Sam was trying to calm Karli down, and he ruined that whole thing, which is what eventually led to Lamar dying. Because if he hadn't done that, maybe Sam could have talked Karli out of doing what she wanted to do, which was to kill actually John. Um, because he wore the Stars and Stripes as Captain America, and her whole thing as the Flag Smashers is that she doesn't think that the world should have borders, and having flags causes that, and it divides people instead of uniting them. So in this moment, when he does it again, put his hand on his helmet, I feel like Lamar is speaking to him, and Lamar is telling him to do the right thing, and instead of doing the wrong thing, which is what he did originally in the show, he finally does do the right thing, which it was a good character like development for him, but I just didn't buy it. Like if they would have set it up a little bit more before that, like if he did give up the shield willingly in episode 5 because he realized he did wrong, or even if he didn't at that point, but later on when the government took it away from him, if he like accepted that without fighting back, which is what he was doing, he was yelling at them. He's like he was mad at their decision. Then maybe I would have believed it more. But none of that happened. He was angry the whole time, so I don't think he would have made that decision. And he acts like he's all goody two shoes afterward. But Bucky still doesn't like him. But Bucky and Sam do work with John in the last episode. And I think maybe even Sam does give him like a nod of agreement at the end when they do finish taking down the Flag Smashers, which John did not kill any of in this episode, but Bucky, he still doesn't like him. And Bucky's really annoyed, and he always has been annoyed by him, which I also was. I've definitely been Bucky throughout the show in terms of my feelings for John, but I would say that probably John's strongest moments is when he's portrayed as a flawed human being, and he's given a few scenes where he's able to do that. Specifically in the beginning of episode 2, before he goes out publicly as Captain America on his high school football field. We see him in his just regular non-Captain America uniform, but it's a military uniform, and he's like basically practicing on what he's gonna say when he goes out. And we see Lamar for the first time, and Lamar talks to him, and you could tell that they've been friends for a while, maybe since high school. And then we also see John's wife, who I don't know if they ever said her name in the show, so I never knew what her name was, but I know now because I looked it up, and I think it's Olivia Walker. So she is his wife, and it seems they've been high school sweethearts since they both went to that high school. And John used to be a football player there, so he has a special place in that school. And we see him struggling with like basically living up to the that role and that being that public face as Captain America. Um, so that was like a pretty decent scene to see him in. But I think even better was in episode 4, after the scene where he storms in on Karli and Karli ends up getting away. Nothing happens there except Zemo shoots Karli and injures her, and he destroys most of the super soldier serum that she had as extras that she was planning on using to enhance more people to basically grow her army. But Zemo destroys all of them except for one because John stops him, and John takes that one vial of super soldier serum and he plans to use it later, but he doesn't take it right away. So he has a scene with Lamar in civilian clothes, and they debate about taking the super soldier serum. Like he asks Lamar, if you were given the chance, would you take it? And Lamar says that he would, but John says like you wouldn't be worried about how it might change you. And Lamar says nah, because the serum, from what he's heard, only makes you more of who you already are. And honestly, I think Lamar would be fine taking it because to me, he definitely seemed like a much better person than John, and I actually like really liked him before his death. So when he did die, it was pretty sad. But John, I don't think he should have taken it, and he shouldn't have because we see that it doesn't help him. And John's already been fucked up by war. Um, you could tell that he's struggling with PTSD, which is why he shouldn't even be out in battles anymore. He shouldn't be put into the field. But for some reason, maybe he's able to pass the test where they make sure he's stable mentally, which he's not actually. But maybe he's able to get by and fake his way through it. And in that scene, Lamar tells him that's when he tells him that he usually makes the right call in the heat of battle, which maybe was the case before, but after whatever they did to get medals of honor, which we know John he's gotten a few of. Maybe it was really crazy what they had to do to get it, and John even says in that moment, like those medals of honor are reminders of the worst day of my life because of what he had to do. So he was a war hero. That's what he was considered as. But obviously, in war, you got to do bad things, and that includes John. He's done bad things, so he didn't feel good about having those medals, and he thinks being Captain America would allow him to feel like a hero, actually. But because Lamar says that he would take it, and that John would be okay taking it, John does take it before that final confrontation with the Flag Smashers before Lamar's death. Um, but yeah, so that was a good scene, and that was a good episode for everybody, and especially I think for John Walker. And that was his turn to becoming a darker version of Captain America. Um, and then we see in episode 6 at the end that he finally gets his title from the comics, the U.S. Agent, and also his black version of the Captain America costume, which I think is way better than his actual government issue Captain America costume. Now I'm going to talk about Zemo, whose actual full name is Helmut Zemo, and we find out in Falcon and the Winter Soldier that he's also a baron, which is a title of nobility in his country. So he's also known as Baron Zemo. Um, and Zemo was amazing in the show, but I feel like overall he had a minimal role compared to the other characters. Yeah, I didn't really like Zemo in Civil War, which was his previous appearance and only appearance before the show. He was really smart in that, but he was kind of lame. Like he didn't really do much. Like I don't know. It was just a portrayal. Like he was basically undercover, so he was wearing civilian clothes, and he just looked like a lame nerd or whatever. But in this show, he really got to shine, and they gave him a lot more personality, and he was actually really funny. And I would say the episode he shined the most in was probably episode 3, which was basically his episode. Um, but I think Zemo definitely stood out the most when he was voicing his philosophical ideas about enhanced individuals, which includes the Avengers and the super soldiers that were in the show, the Flag Smashers. And the main scenes that stick out to me where he was talking about that are the plane ride in episode 3 before and I think maybe after they go to Madripoor. And he mentions, Steve, like how the problem with Avengers or heroes that are put on this pedestal it also applies to celebrities in real life and probably in the MCU, which the Avengers basically have become celebrities. So the problem with that is that once we put them on this pedestal, we then start to forget about their flaws, and that's not good for anybody. It's not good for the person that is put on that pedestal because then they feel superior to others, and it's not good for others because then they could feel like less, and it's not actually true. And later on in episode 4, he specifically brings up the word supremacy. And Zemo says that the the want of becoming a superhero or superpowered in any way, whether it is the super soldier serum, an Iron Man suit, or whatever, is is that you gain supremacist ideals because you want to be better, not only like stronger or whatever, for yourself, but then if you do get that, you think you're better than others because you're stronger, you're whatever, you're a celebrity, so more people know you. And like he made some really good points and all that stuff. The only thing about Zemo is that he has the right ideas, but he also goes about it the wrong way, just like Karli and her mission. Because Zemo, I think he's afraid of others being better than him with these powers. So his way of dealing with it is by basically getting rid of them. Which, like, if it was a whole community, is no different from genocide. So Zemo is not right in what he does either, but his ideas are really strong and make a lot of sense, and they're really interesting. But I would say Zemo's resolution was kind of unrealistic, and he kind of makes his exit in episode 5. And the reason why I say it's unrealistic is because he's just waiting basically for Bucky to come and capture him. And I don't think Zemo would have let himself be captured that easily. Like I feel like he would have tried to not be captured, but especially because he had just gotten out of prison, and he's been in prison for like 5 7 years, depending on if he was snapped out of existence or not. I would assume he wasn't. But yeah, since 2016, it was 2 years until Infinity War, and if he didn't get snapped, it was another 5 years during that gap before Endgame. So he's been in prison for like 7 years. That's a long time. So I don't think he would have just let himself get put back in prison right away. I feel like he would have made more of an effort to not get captured, but he doesn't. So I just didn't believe that. I thought it would be more difficult to get him. Um, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But luckily, he did have a small little scene in episode 6, so he wasn't out of the picture completely. But we see that his butler blows up the flag smashers after they're all captured. Another thing about Zemo that I didn't like was that they gave him his famous mask from the comics, the purple mask, and they kind of hinted at it, but they didn't ever really say it. If there was any significance to it, like it seemed like he just wore it as a mask, like just so that he conceals his identity. And he only literally wore it in one scene, which was in episode 3 when they were fighting the mercenaries or whatever, the bounty hunters that were coming after them. And then he never wore it again. So that was kind of weird. Like, why did he need to wear it at all if you weren't gonna explain it, or if he wasn't gonna wear it more than just that one time? So I feel like that was kind of pointless and like a bit of a letdown because I thought they were gonna go into that a little bit. But I feel like it has something to do with his family because he did say that he comes from a line of barons. Like I said, it was like a nobility in his culture or whatever. So I feel like it's a family like crest or like artifact that's passed down from generation to generation. But they never explained that, so I don't know if we'll ever see it again. Like maybe if Zemo comes back again, he'll wear it again and they'll explain it then. But I feel like they shouldn't have introduced the mask unless they were gonna explain it. So that was kind of lame. Overall, I would also say Zemo, his character within the show, and his purpose that he served in the show was also kind of pointless because I feel like he didn't really do anything that important when you think about it for the whole plot of the show from beginning to end. Because his main purpose was literally just to kill flag smashers or super soldiers, which he does kill the doctor who made the super soldier serum, so they can't make any more, and then he destroys all the vials that have not been used yet. But the only one that was used was John Walker. But I don't know if Zemo ever knew that John Walker had taken the serum. Karli, the leader of the Flag Smashers, is also killed in the last episode. So all of the super soldiers that were created in the show have been killed and dealt with. So Zemo feels like his purpose was served. But I feel like Sharon could have easily taken a similar role to Zemo, because Zemo also served as like a bit of a tour guide to Sam and Bucky in the international countries they visit. But the first one they go to is Madripoor, and we find out that Sharon has been living in Madripoor, and and she seems to have quite a bit of power there that she's gained from being there. And I feel like she's also been there since Civil War, and I feel like she also probably has not or wasn't snapped away by Thanos. So she's been there for like 7 years, and that's why she's been able to gain this much power by making her way through. But we find out in episode 6 that Sharon actually is the power broker, who is the one that the doctor that made the serum was working for. So the only thing that Sharon probably couldn't have done that Zemo did is kill the doctor that made it, because she would have no reason to do that. But I feel like if they wanted to kill the doctor, they could have done it in another way. Like it could have been an accident with all the bounty hunters hunting Sam and Bucky down. Um, he could have just died as a casualty of war in that moment. But everybody else, which are the Flag Smashers, were killed by Zemo. But Sharon also wanted them dead because they went against her. And Sharon is the one that kills Karli. So that was one of them. But then the others were blown up by Zemo's butler. And I feel like Sharon could have also done that. So I feel like Zemo overall wasn't really necessary for the show. But I did uh, I did like Sharon. I think she was really good in the show, but overall she was kind of underused. Like she was more in the background because she's supposed to be, I guess, like a shady character, and I guess we weren't supposed to really like know for sure that she was the power broker. Since they did make her like a bit of a darker character, I feel like her character did benefit from that because she was definitely more interesting in this show compared to the movies that she's been in, which I think have only been The Winter Soldier and Civil War, where she was kind of just like Peggy's niece, like oh, like she's basically just like I don't know, like a duplicate of Peggy. I mean, not really, because her characteristics were definitely different, but she was just like another Shield agent, pretty much. But they made her more interesting here, especially because she seems like a more of like possibly villainous, which obviously Peggy was not. So they're kind of she's more of like the opposite of Peggy now, and I think that's definitely more interesting than just being the same as Peggy. Um, but I would say also just like Zemo, Sharon Carter's best episode was probably episode 3 because she appeared the most in that one, and there she was portrayed as like a hero with a bit of mystery around her. And she has become disenfranchised by the government because they never pardoned her like they did the Avengers after the events of Infinity War. And the reason for that is probably because she didn't help in that battle against Thanos, and they did. But she did the right thing in that movie, so they should have pardoned her, but they never did. So she just feels basically salty about that. And then in episode 4, I think is when she becomes pretty much a straight on villain because I think it's in that episode where I got the best idea that she probably was the power broker because I think she strolls into a facility like that's armed with guards like easily. Like they don't give her any sort of problem. So it seems like she is the one in charge there. And then I don't know if it was episode 4 or episode. I think it was episode 5. Where we hear her talking to Batroc the Leaper, the French mercenary who was at the beginning of the show in the helicopter scene with Falcon, the action scene, and he was also in the Winter Soldier on the boat when he fought Captain America, Steve Rogers. So we find out that she was the one that hired him for that original job, and then now she's hiring him to infiltrate the Flag Smashers group because Karli doesn't know that he's working for Sharon. And then obviously in episode 6 we see her kill Sharon, and that's when we find out that she is the power broker, which that reveal I didn't really like because it kind of was too predictable given everything we had seen of Sharon before in the show. Like I thought maybe she would be the power broker, and that turned out to be true, but I thought it would have been better if she just worked with the power broker or for the power broker, and it was actually somebody else, like a bigger figure that has been around in the MCU since the very beginning, and who we could easily believe has a lot of power. And the person I thought that was going to be was Thunderbolt Ross, who was General Ross in the Incredible Hulk movie, which was the very second movie and the first year of the MCU's existence. So he has been around since the beginning, and we've seen him move up the ranks in the U.S. government since then, and he made his big appearance back into the MCU in Civil War as Secretary of State, I think is what he's considered. It would make sense that he was the power broker because the power broker wanted to make super soldiers, and he already tried to make super soldiers with in the Incredible Hulk movie with both Bruce Banner himself as the Hulk, which didn't work out, and then again with Emil Blonsky, who became the Abomination. Um, that also was it was actually more of a success, but Blonsky had a lust for even more power than he originally had because the Hulk still kicked his ass because he was more of like a Captain America type super soldier where he didn't have any major um, like mutations, but he didn't care about how his appearance looked, so he wanted the Hulk's power, and he got it, and he became an even stronger um, and bigger being than the Hulk. He became uglier as well, and that's when he became the Abomination. And the Abomination still lives because Hulk didn't kill him in the movie, so I feel like he's probably in the Raft, which is the floating prison that was introduced in Civil War and made a return here, and that's where Zemo was sent to. So I definitely have some ideas about where they could be taking things in the future, but I'll go into that at the end of the video. So now I'm gonna move into the themes of the show, and I feel like all of the themes that they introduced and were exploring in the show were all done really well, and they're all really important themes as well. So the first major theme is race, and we see that theme explored through Sam's lens, and like I mentioned previously in episode 1, we see racism in the bank scene, which is very real for Black people and actually probably all minorities in America, that they're not given the same rights or trust in like getting loans and stuff like that for houses or cars or whatever by banks as white people do. And it's because most people that work at banks are white people and they have these stereotypes and prejudices. But like I said, that scene kind of didn't come across as like real to me as the rest of the show and its exploration of race and racism in America. And one scene that I think did work really well was in episode 2, right after Sam and Bucky visit Isaiah Bradley, who is another character that really shows that theme in the series. But it's right after they visit him, they go outside and Sam's like surprised and he's like asking Bucky like how did nobody know about this black super soldier? And he's like raising his voice because he's just shocked and like mad about what happened to Isaiah, which rightfully so, because they really did something terrible to Isaiah and then try to cover it up. Um, but then the police pull up because it's like a small, seemingly poor town. So of course there's gonna be these racist ass white police officers, and they come up and they ask Bucky, "Is this guy giving you a problem?" And they're talking about Sam, because they're accusing Sam like, "Oh, he's doing something wrong, and he's with this white guy, so he must be like starting trouble with this white guy." But they're together, and Bucky tells them like, "No," like they're both kind of pissed off in that moment. Like Bucky's pissed because the police come to them like accusing them of whatever. But the police officer asks Sam for his license, which or his ID, which they're not even in a car, so that shit is stupid as fuck. But Sam says he doesn't have his license, and then Bucky's like, "Yo, just give him your ID," which obviously Bucky shouldn't have done. But I don't know for sure if Sam had it or not, but it doesn't matter because like I said, there's no reason for them to ask him for his ID. But then the other police officer, he like whispers it in the other guy's ear, and he basically tells him that, oh, Sam is an Avenger. And then the guy's like, oh shit, I'm so sorry. Like, oh, you're this celebrity, you're this big whatever guy. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. But if he wasn't, he probably would. They probably would have just let him mess with him, because that's what they do. And I feel like that scene was fucking real as shit, especially in the time that we're living in, where we're seeing even more publicly police brutality against minorities, especially after last year, the whole 2020 thing with George Floyd and his death, and the Black Lives Matter movement being really pushed in the spotlight because of it. So that should really that it really hit home, um, and I think that was real, more so than the bank scene was for me. And yeah, and it shows how celebrities or people with money and people who are known are afforded more freedoms than people who are not, and that includes in the black community and whatever else minorities. And this guy, he didn't even recognize him outside of his costume, so he was just gonna mess with him anyway. But yeah, and obviously the Isaiah Bradley stuff was really real too. As I mentioned previously, like his whole situation was based off of a real life event, and Isaiah, because of his experiences, has become bitter. And he says in episode 5, when Sam finally goes back to visit him again after he gets the shield, and that's when Sam finds out more about what happened with Bradley, because he opens up more. But I really like how Isaiah Bradley's story was concluded in the show in episode 6, because Sam once again visits him. And first we see that Isaiah and his grandson Elijah uh, both see Sam's speech on live television, where he's telling the GRC that they're not governing the way they should be, and they see Sam as a black Captain America, which Isaiah told Sam in the previous episode that the U.S. government would never let a black man be Captain America. So when Sam went out there as Captain America, like he was making a statement, and like Isaiah was, I think, moved by that, even though he didn't think he should have necessarily done it. But then when Sam visits him afterward, they have another little conversation, and then Sam decides to show Isaiah something, and he takes them to the Smithsonian, and we see that Sam got a memorial made for Isaiah Bradley and all the other soldiers that were experimented on during the Korean War to recreate the super soldier serum, and they even got a statue made of Isaiah, and that meant a lot to him. And we see him like get emotional, and then he hugs Sam. So they actually like really formed a bond, and I definitely feel like Isaiah and Elijah are gonna show up again in the future. And in the comics, Isaiah Bradley actually like was Captain America. for a time. I don't know if they ever gave him that title and like gave him a full uniform and any sort of shield in the MCU. It didn't really seem like that, maybe, but we don't see it, so it could be, it could not, I don't know. But in the comics, Elijah, Isaiah's grandson, he becomes a Star Spangled Hero as well, and his alias is Patriot, and he does have a different shield, which I think is more of the like triangular shield, kind of similar to Steve's first shield in World War II, when he was just the USO like mascot or whatever, going around with the shows, basically raising money for bonds before he got his real vibranium shield. So I'm assuming we will see Elijah become Patriot because he's part of the Young Avengers team, and I feel like Marvel is slowly but surely building up to that. But there was no indication of it yet in this show. But if it does happen, which, like I said, I'm assuming it will, Wanda's children will also probably be part of the team because they are in the comics. So whatever happens in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is going to be her and their next appearance, they'll probably age up to teenagers, and then they'll be part of that team as well. It'll be Billy and Tommy, Wicked and Speed. I'm gonna move into the next major theme of the show, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and that theme is PTSD and trauma, which we see most in Bucky and John Walker as soldiers. And I think both of their PTSD comes from doing bad things as soldiers. Walker was doing basically what he had to do, whereas Bucky was doing something that he never wanted to do because of the Hydra brainwashing, and that's more of where his trauma comes from. It's not from serving as just himself in World War II. It's from being the Winter Soldier all these years, and we actually see Bucky's like the nightmare in episode one, and we see him like struggle with that throughout, and like he wants to get out of that Winter Soldier bubble that Zemo sees him in. Like Zemo is throughout his time in the show is always messing with Bucky and trying to bring the Winter Soldier out of him because Zemo sees the world for the worst. I feel like Bucky might be kind of in the middle, and Sam is actually more like Steve, where he tries to see the world for the better and see people for the better. And then John Walker, he we see him like he has like this little twitch, like he twitches his neck and his like fingers. He's like that guy's off. I don't know. He might have be doing some drugs, like I don't know, some drugs to try to get him through the PTSD and trauma that he's experienced, which I know is a thing that real veterans are prescribed with, and maybe that's why he has that twitch and stuff that he experiences. And then I feel like the super soldier serum only makes it worse, and maybe he was searching for kind of a certain high from that. Like I feel like there might be a subtle, like super subtle drug metaphor in the show with the whole super soldier serum and specifically John Walker as a character. But I'm not sure. Like that just might be me projecting onto the show from my own life and experiences or whatever. Another theme that the show covers is nationalism, which John Walker is the epitome of in the show. And nationalism is just like where you think your country is right above all else. Like you don't think about what your country actually does, and you just think they're always right without ever questioning them. And I feel like John Walker was also a metaphor for police in the show because not only do you see him have handcuffs like all the time on him, and he handcuffs people like in episode two when we see him first go to the place where the flag smashers were housed by a civilian, and they're like interrogating the people to find out where the flag smashers are, and the guy spits in John Walker's face because he despises him just like most people should or would probably. um and he gets pissed off and he's like, you know who I am, and of course the dude knows he am because he's wearing his fucking costume as Captain America. But the guy says, "Yeah, I know, and I don't care." And John's pissed because he feels like he should get respect just because he wears that costume and carries that shield. And that, I feel like that's how bad police officers act and feel too. Like, oh, I got this badge, you should respect me, and I'm the shit because I'm a cop because I got a badge, which is not the truth. Like, you earn respect. It doesn't matter what you wear or who you are. You still gotta earn respect with anybody and everybody you meet, and you earn that with behavior. And if you're behaving like a fucking bitch, you're not gonna be respected. So that kind of goes into the next theme, which is supremacy, which Zemo is the one that brings it up, and the ones that tie into that theme are Karli and the Flag Smashers, or super soldiers in general, and John Walker, because like I said, John Walker, he not only wants to be respected and seen a certain way, and because of that, I feel like he does think that he's better than others. Like even Sam and Bucky, he feels like because I'm Captain America, you guys got to answer to me, even though they have more experience and they know more of what they're doing than he does. And then Karli and the Flag Smashers, they also kind of go into that realm because of their superhuman abilities. And Karli also thinks that she's better than John when actually they're kind of similar in a lot of ways. I don't think I have anything else to say about that. But another theme that the show covers is basically the idea of a failed government, or just failed governing, and like corruption that could arise within government. And the major characters, once again, that are used to explore this theme are John Walker and the Flag Smashers, and then also Sharon Carter, because we see first with Sharon Carter that the reason why she's kind of gone rogue is because the government turned its back on her, because technically she went against them, even though she was doing the right thing, and but they never like pardoned her for that or excused her for that, even though she did the right thing, and things ended up working out and in the end due to her decisions in Civil War by giving Sam and Steve their equipment back, the shield and then Sam's wings. But also the Flag Smashers, because their whole thing is like the government is kicking us out, but that's wrong, and that's what like motivates them. And Sharon is also similar, and we find out that Sharon actually knows Karli, the leader of the Flag Smashers, but Karli turned her back on Sharon, on the power broker, because Sharon wants to basically just gain power herself so that she doesn't have to answer to the government. But Karli wants the government to change, but she's kind of forcing it to change instead of convincing it to change by through violence. And then after John is demoted as Captain America, we see John being failed by the government, because his story really is, I think, a mirror for veterans in the military in the U.S. And instead of like getting him the help he needs, which he should have gotten before that point, because he did have the PTSD and he should never went out back into combat, and instead he should have gotten help for whatever he was struggling with. And they don't give him that. And then once he does what he does by killing the Flag Smasher, and then he's demoted by the government, they say that they're taking away all of his benefits, and he basically gets nothing, but they're not going to put him in prison. And that's another thing about race, probably, actually, as well. He has that white privilege, and that's the only reason why he's probably not getting put in prison. Like if he was a black guy, maybe he would have been put in prison for what he did. But the reason that they give is that his previous military experience is why he's not getting put in prison, because he's been proven to be a hero and serving his country. But they still don't give him help. Like obviously, when he killed this guy, it was because he was off mentally. But they just say, "Oh, you're not Captain America. Like you're not gonna serve us anymore, and we're gonna take away all your stuff." But instead of getting him help, they basically just like forget about him. They throw him under the rug, and that's not good either because that's how he's able to be even more corrupted by somebody else. And we see um, Julia Louis Dreyfus's surprise cameo character. She comes to recruit John for what I'm assuming is not good things. So she sees value in him. So of course he's gonna go with her because the government they threw him under the bus. They don't see him as a valuable asset anymore. So he's gonna go to whoever does see him as a valuable asset. And that kind of ties back into his whole him being a metaphor for prison system, I feel. Because prison I don't think works. Like we've seen that it doesn't work because people go into prison, they come out and they do the same shit all over again. It doesn't matter how long they've been in there, but they do it. And instead of prison, instead of punishing people by just locking them up in cages, what we should do is try to rehabilitate them mentally and emotionally so that they don't do what they're doing again. And I feel like we've seen that that does work because we see it in like addiction rehabilitation, stuff like that, like AA and whatever else for alcohol, for drugs. If you go through it and you're successful in the program, like most people, they stay pretty good and they don't go back to drugs or whatever. Like obviously they can, but a lot of times it does work and they don't go back to it. And that's what we should do for just mental problems as well, which includes why people commit crimes. Um, and it's due to society too, like especially in minority populations and groups and the poor. The reason why they resort to crime is because they don't have opportunities like other people, and that's the only way you could make it. Like that's what it seems like, and my idea is that you always do have a choice. Like you don't have to do what you think you have to do in those situations, but sometimes maybe you do because you try to get a regular job, but they don't give it to you. So like you got to make money somehow. So some people resort to like selling drugs and just joining gangs, and that's a cycle too. It just repeats itself. Like you learn these behaviors from being in a gang, and uh, and then it's hard to unlearn them after you've already learned them. But it is possible, and I feel like that's what we should focus on more instead of just locking these people up because it's not gonna solve nothing. It just continues the cycle pretty much because the police themselves are basically just another gang. I don't know. That's all I'll say about that. I kind of went in a little tangent there, but now I'm gonna talk about the story and the plot of the show. And I already mentioned the plot, like how I kind of found that it was weak, but I feel like the story of the show is more about Sam and Bucky finding their place in the post Endgame world, specifically without Steve. And I feel like that part of the show was really well done. That part was really good. Because we see Sam come to the forefront as a leading character, and I believe that he can be a leading character going forward. And he becomes Captain America. And Marvel have already announced that there's going to be a Captain America movie, Captain America 4, with Sam Wilson as Captain America. And I believe that Sam could hold his own movie trilogy. And I honestly think after episode 6 and after the whole show, Sam could even be a better Captain America than Steve Rogers ever was because Steve kind of went against the government. He went outside of the bubble because he's like, the government's not working for me. So I'm just going to do what I think is right. and just be a private like hero or whatever, privatize. But it seems like Sam actually does want to be helping within the government itself because he wants it to change. And I feel like that's possibly even stronger. Instead of just doing your own thing, you gotta help what is and has a lot of power to be better. And that'll it'll be more impactful for everybody, I think. And it seems like he did convince the GRC, which are the government in the MCU, who were causing these problems, because they decided to not go through with what they were going to go through by kicking out everybody who was displaced by the blip and then everybody coming back. I don't know if he will necessarily work for the government, like he might still be kind of like his own thing, but he is working legally now because I guess I don't know if he would have signed the Sokovia Accords where he is doing what they're telling him to do, but either way, I think he's doing it right. And also, he's just a badass. The new Captain America costume with Falcon, Sam Wilson, is amazing. I honestly think it's probably the best Captain America costume of all of them, of all of Steve's, and probably one of my favorite costumes of the whole MCU, if not even maybe my favorite. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to whatever he does next, and Captain America movies where they go. Another thing that was really cool about the finale was when the title at the end changed from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier to Captain America and the Winter Soldier. The only thing is, I feel like they should have changed the Winter Soldier's name as well. It should have been White Wolf, or at least just his real name, Bucky Barnes, because he's not the Winter Soldier. Like that's what the whole show was about. That it was Bucky stepping out of that title and becoming just himself as Bucky Barnes. Because I feel like maybe they didn't want to say White Wolf because White Wolf is specifically a Wakanda thing, so he's only a White Wolf when he's there. And I thought maybe he would go back to Wakanda, but after the Dora Milaje captured Zemo, they said it's best to make yourself scarce in Wakanda, so I feel like he's not gonna go back anytime soon. But it would have been cool if it was Captain America and Bucky Barnes, something like that. But maybe he'll just turn the Winter Soldier into something good instead of something bad. Um, but he'll still be like as badass as the Winter Soldier. But we'll see, I guess. So now I'm gonna talk about the action in the show. And I'd say the action was really good overall. It was great. Um, I feel like overall it's not as good as the Captain America movie action in terms of the last two, Winter Soldier and Civil War. But the best hand-to-hand combat was probably the Dora Milaje in episode 4 when they kicked John Walker's ass, which was an amazing scene because it was funny to see. And then the best other types of action were probably Sam's aerial battles in his Falcon suit. Episode 1, that first action scene with the helicopter canyon chase and jumpsuit or wingsuit chase. That was really good and that was really badass. Honestly, I think that was probably still Sam's best action scene in all of his appearances. And then episode 5, another good hand-to-hand combat scene was when Sam and Bucky finally fought John Walker to get the shield back. And we saw a lot of cool maneuverability with Sam in the wings in that scene and his other scenes too. But a lot of those more like in enclosed spaces, he's not able to fly around as much, but he still does really cool things with the wings. But in episode 6, when he comes back as Captain America, he does a lot of cool stuff again with the helicopter, and then just his flying around is really cool. And he definitely feels more powerful in his flight than his previous Falcon suit because his Captain America suit is was given to him by Wakanda. So I think the tech is a lot better, and I think he's faster. He actually kind of reminds me of like a bit of a Captain America and Iron Man hybrid the way that he moves, like it's kind of similar to Iron Man, where he's able to make these quick turns and then jet out. Um, it reminds me of the like Iron Man repulsor tech from his gauntlets, and yeah, so all that stuff was really cool. And now I'm gonna talk about another like genre or tone that the show was trying to do, which was like a buddy comedy. And I feel like that aspect of the show actually wasn't really that strong. It was decent, but I feel like it focused more on the drama than like trying to be a comedy. But it did have comedic elements in it, just like most of the Marvel movies do. And I feel like it was more in that vein of just being like a Marvel movie with action and comedy, but not being an actual comedy movie. And it did well with that, I think. I think the jokes that they did have in the show always landed for me, so that was a good um, element to it. But I feel like sometimes it compromised the overall tone a bit. Like it didn't really fit, and like if it came after like a more dramatic scene, and then out of nowhere there's like this joke. Overall, I didn't really notice it, so it did work overall. But there are some moments where maybe it did feel a little bit off in the switch up of the tone. But I feel like that was only noticeable when I like rewatched it, because I did rewatch the whole series now that it was fully out from the beginning to the end. So yeah. So now I'm gonna go into my like theories for what's gonna happen next in the MCU with these characters. And my one theory that I have is that Joaquin Torres, the military guy that Sam teamed up with in episode one, and he made like a couple minor appearances in the other episodes. I have a feeling like he's gonna become the next Falcon now that Falcon or Sam is Captain America. Because in episode five, when Sam got the shield back and he left and Joaquin was there, Torres said, "Hey, you forgot the wings," and then Sam said, "Keep them." And in the comics, that's what happens. In that exact same way, I think that's what I've heard. That when Sam becomes Captain America, Torres becomes the new Falcon. But in the comics, his costume's pretty lame, so I hope they give him a better one in the movies. So we'll see. I don't know. Maybe in the Sam Wilson Captain America movies, he'll become Falcon. But I like seeing him. Like that guy seemed pretty cool. I kind of wish he was in the show more, especially because it's good to have Latino in the MCU. So it'll be cool to see this guy as a superhero now. And I hope they get more Latino superheroes in the MCU, including both male and female. So yeah, probably my biggest theory, or the thing that I'm most curious about, which I actually don't know for sure what's gonna happen, is with Sharon, because she called in the post credit scene. There was a post credit scene in the last episode where she gets her pardon that she seemed to have wanted from the government, so she's able to be back in the U.S. Legally. But then she calls somebody on the phone as basically the power broker, and she's like, "Okay, so super soldiers didn't work out, but now I have access to all this intelligence from the U.S. government and everything else that they're working on in terms of technology and whatever else." And I have a feeling that maybe she's actually working with a criminal organization. And originally I thought maybe it was like the return of Hydra, but she never said Hail Hydra or nothing like that. So after seeing the Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings trailer, I feel like maybe she's actually working with the Ten Rings. Because in that trailer, it seemed like they might go to Madripoor, which was introduced in this show, which is where she was as the power broker, and the power broker had power over that entire area of Madripoor. So Ten Rings could also have a big presence there, and she might be linked up with them. So that'd be interesting to see. But I don't know for sure about that one. Like that's just a guess. I don't really have any good evidence for it, but I think Julia Louis Dreyfus's character, Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, is actually working with Thunderbolt Ross, who I mentioned was the general in the Incredible Hulk movie, and came back in Civil War and made some minor appearances in Infinity War, and I think at the end of Endgame too. He went to Tony's funeral because I feel like Thunderbolt Ross wants to form a team, and he might have already been planning this for a while, or maybe he already had a team since the Incredible Hulk, and he's always wanted to control powerful people. So Abomination was the first one, and I feel like he might be on this team if he is forming something now. But Val, when she made John Walker U.S. Agent, she said she was telling his wife that Zemo blew up the Flag Smashers, and she's like, "Oh, I couldn't have planned it any better than myself, or did I plan it?" So I feel like she's linked with Zemo, and Zemo's in the raft, and Thunderbolt Ross was in charge of the raft in Civil War. So that's why I feel like they're working together, and they are recruiting a team. So John Walker obviously was recruited by Val, so I think he'll be on the team. Zemo's in the raft now, so he might be recruited to be on the team. And Abomination, like I said, is probably going to be on it. And then I feel like whatever happens in the Black Widow movie, which is going to be the next like major thing in this sort of vein of the MCU, like with the whole secret like spy stuff in the MCU. We're gonna be introduced to Yelena Belova, which in the comics was a different Black Widow, and I think she's also technically a Black Widow in the MCU because the Black Widow is not just one person; it's also like a group of people, a program. So I feel like she'll probably live to become the next Black Widow since Natasha Romanoff has died in Endgame, and she might be a darker version of Natasha, so she might be recruited onto the team as well, and maybe more so in the vein of John Walker, where he's not in prison, they just recruit him directly. So we'll see what happens. Like it'll probably be like a post-credit scene in Black Widow. That's what I'm predicting, because the movie is gonna take place like right after Civil War, and obviously before Infinity War. So it'll be mostly in the past, but there'll probably be a post-credit scene set in the present when she gets recruited. And then I feel like another possibility to join the team is Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp, because we already found out in that movie that she was already a like somebody who was serving Shield and doing like these secret missions where she was taking out people that they wanted to take out, and possibly the people that were telling her to do this were actually the Hydra agents within Shield. So she might be recruited again for this team. And we don't know what happened to her. They mentioned her in Ant-Man and the Wasp at the end in the post-credit scene when Scott was going into the quantum realm, that they were getting something for her condition where like she's like getting glitched out because of the quantum like energy or whatever. But we didn't see her again, so I don't know when we will see her again. But I feel like if we do and she's still alive, that she'll get recruited for this team because she does seem to be one of those darker characters. And what I think this team could possibly be is the Thunderbolts, because Ross, his name actually is Thunderbolt Ross, so him being one of the people in charge of it, could name the team after himself. Or they could just be like a Dark Avengers, because John Walker is like a dark Captain America, Yelena Belova is like a dark Black Widow, Abomination is like a dark Hulk. So if that is the case, I think maybe Justin Hammer could be another person that they recruit. And Justin Hammer was the guy from Iron Man 2 who was like basically Tony's rival in terms of being a weapon manufacturer. But he wasn't as smart as Tony, so a lot of his stuff doesn't even work. But he could have maybe gotten better now. And we know that he's actually in prison too, because he did make a return in a little short film which actually ties to Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, because it's about Trevor Slattery, the guy who faked being the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. But in this short film, which is called All Hail the King, Trevor Slattery was kidnapped by the Ten Rings and told that the Mandarin is real, and he's pissed off that you used his name. And Justin Hammer was in that same prison that Trevor Slattery was in, so he could possibly be finished with his prison sentence and out, because a lot of years have passed in the MCU since Iron Man 2. So he could be coming back into the light and become his own villain, and he'll be like the evil Iron Man. So we'll see what happens, but I feel like the MCU has a lot of exciting things coming up, and the next thing that we'll see is the Loki show. So we'll get back into more of that weird sci-fi stuff that WandaVision had a bit of with Loki, and I think it's gonna be a time travel show like Avengers Endgame. So that'll be really interesting and exciting. So we'll see what happens next, but I'm definitely excited for what's coming next in the MCU. And I've been loving Phase 4 so far, and I'm really excited for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings as well. Looks really awesome. So you could check out my reaction video to that trailer, and some of my other videos too. But thank you for watching, and goodbye.